So I have this, it's almost like it's sand. It's compacted to the end of my shoe, and I'm going, what the fuck? I don't know how many times I've tried to kick it loose. It's not dogs yet. Kick it loose from my shoes, it's still there. So then I'm like, oh fuck, I gotta tell this story. The Aracorian story about the sand in the shoes, okay? So back in those days, the house was structured so that the only way to get to the top of the house so that you could interact with the upper echelon was to keep up with your learnings. And you were always tested along the way. So at any point in time, your father had the authority to knock you down to lower learnings. And then you would have to climb your way back up. Okay? So, HIA, HIA got knocked down. And he got knocked down with the Sioux. And at the time that he got knocked down, Numerator was analyzing these human figures that just appeared out of nowhere. And, he was trying to figure out, well, where did they come from? And so HIA is standing there going, upset that he got knocked down to the Sioux. And had to pick up his learnings once again from the Sioux. So he's like, well, maybe we can track them. Good idea. So Numerator sifted off at the bottom of their shoes some sand and put it in a little cloth and handed it to HIA. Well, HIA took it and he started matching up, traveling here, traveling there, laying the cloth down that had the sand in it, trying to match up. Well, what region did these people come from? They obviously came from someplace where they could pick up this sand, this golden sand on the bottom of their shoes. So further and further he went out on his travels, and so he finally came upon a section of land, and it matched exactly the sand that he was carrying on this piece of cloth from when he left Numerator with these bodies to where he was currently standing. And he had traveled so far searching for the right sand, he didn't realize that at that point in time he was standing on what was later classified as India. And so as he was analyzing the sand and trying to put some type of coordinates around where he was so that when he got back to Numerator, he could say, all right, here's where I found this sand, and here's the distance that I traveled. So he's picking up the sand off the cloth, and this girl is, he sees a set of shoes in front of him, and he looks up, and it's this girl, and she took notice of him. He didn't look anything like her people. And she started to weep and cry, and she left. And so she gets back to her father's house, which is a palace, and her brother, which is more or less a guard in the palace. And her brother's pressuring her, what is upsetting you? What is upsetting you? And so she tells him that she saw this man, unlike any other man that she's ever seen before, out close to the desert. And his eyes were the color of the sky. And he was the most beautiful man that she's ever seen before. And he touched her in such a way that it caused her to cry. Well, her brother picked up the part of the touching. And so where did he touch you? And she tried to explain, and the more she tried to explain, that it wasn't the touching from a, hand to hand or hand, with your hands, but emotionally it touched her just seeing this man. And so he took a bunch of his friends out there and they located HIA, who was just, analyzing the dirt. And they captured him and they tortured him on a cross. And he never made it home. But he is Iroquoian. And so if that shattered set of bones is out there somewhere, why don't you send that boy home? HIA needs to come home. It's been way too long. And he was just following instructions from his father, staying with the Sioux, and they were working on Sioux-like endeavors. So HIA needs to come home. The meaning of the shoes.